right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
Well, the Democratic Party is a dumpster fire of epic proportions, and if you don't believe me, get a load of this.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Last year, former President Joe Biden's horrible debate performance stunned the nation, but the outcome of the debate was not a surprise, apparently, to Biden insiders and his inner circle, obviously, because they're communicating with him on a regular basis. And according to Ron Klain, Biden was just as much of a mess in the debate preparations. So we're learning about that now. Ron Klain was his chief of staff, right?
Yeah, for the first few years, and has been a stalwart insider in the Biden camp the entire time. That's why some of these comments about the debate prep are shocking. I actually got a quote from Ron Klain after these comments came out. I'll read that quote to you after Anna reads what came out in the book.
So in 2024, Ron Klain joined Biden's debate preparation team. So this is how he had inside knowledge about how things were going during the debate practices and stuff like that. Now he spoke to reporter Cliff Whipple, who's got a great last name, for Whipple's upcoming book, which The Guardian obtained a copy of. According to Klain, it turned out that Biden didn't know what Trump had been saying and couldn't grasp what the back and forth was. Left preparation and fell asleep by the pool, which sounds lovely, but isn't lovely when you're preparing a debate for a presidential run. Obsessed about foreign leaders saying, these guys say I'm doing a great job as president, so I must be a great president. Didn't really understand what his argument was on inflation and had nothing to say about a second term other than finish the job. At his first meeting with Biden in Aspen Lodge, the president's cabin, Whipple writes, Klain was startled. He'd never seen him so exhausted and out of it. Biden was unaware of what was happening in his own campaign. Halfway through the session, the president excused himself and went off to sit by the pool. And it seemed as though the only thing motivating Joe Biden was working with NATO, like as if that's the most important thing in like selling yourself to the American people, right? To win another term. Klain, Whipple writes, wondered half seriously if Biden thought he was president of NATO instead of the United States. He just became very enraptured with being the head of NATO. There's more. We'll get into what happened during the two mock debates in just a minute. But Cenk, thoughts so far?
Yeah, none of this makes sense because the quotes in the book from Ron Klain make sense. Biden was a disaster, and anybody who spent time with him would realize that. I mean, look at that clip we just showed you. Can you believe that Democrats argued after the debate that he shouldn't drop out?
I can believe it because Democrats love to gaslight. And when I say Democrats, I'm not talking about the voters. I never am talking about the voters. I'm talking about Democrats in positions of power, administration officials, those close to Biden. No, media figures who identify as Democrats. No, I'm not surprised because their modus operandi from the very beginning was gaslight, 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 gaslight about everything. Gaslight about immigration, gaslight about crime, gaslight about Biden's age, gaslight about everything because we think the voters are stupid and that they don't recognize reality. I can't stand these people. All of them should never work in politics again, but unfortunately they will. They will.
Yeah, so TYT got this quote from Ron Klain to try to explain it because he says that Biden shouldn't have dropped out. Well, wait, if you believe that, how could you believe that he wouldn't drop out? But he's told TYT, my concern was not with his mental acuity, which was sharp, but with his focus on Ukraine and Israel, which had pulled him out of domestic politics. I did not doubt his ability to run for president, only his focus on these foreign policy matters that were derailing his domestic agenda.
Okay, well, Ron Klain was wrong. If that's what he actually meant, he's wrong.
Yeah.
Really, he's sharp, Biden's sharp. Okay.
So look, the reason why I say that doesn't make sense, and look, Clayton's an interesting character because he was the one guy who was open-minded and actually listened to progressives and brought them into the White House, etc. So there's positive things about Ron Klain, and it was always willing to talk to others, which almost never happens in the establishment. So he has that going for him. But even in these, but if you notice, he didn't deny anything in the quote he gave to UIT, right? And so if these are true, that Biden didn't really understand what his argument was on inflation, I mean, that was the #1 issue, right? And had nothing to say about a second term other than, oh, I'll finish the job. Like these are bare minimum, could not finish a debate prep for 25 minutes. So any rational person would have looked at that and said, no, we can't go to the camp. We can't do this debate. We can't go in this campaign. This person cannot win. It's not possible. If you don't know why you should get a second term, you don't know how to address the #1 issue in the country, and you're not sure if you're the president of America or NATO, you should not run for president. That's the most obvious thing in the whole wide world. But when you are in a bubble and you got the MAGA bubble, you got this bubble, that bubble, but the thickest bubble of all is inside Washington. And so serving power is such a gigantic pull for all of these people and being in power that they're like, nope, nope, totally fine. He can't even say a sentence. He can't say a sentence. And we should run him for president.
Whipple describes 2 mock debates. Klain called off the first after 45 minutes because Biden's voice was a wreck, and he could not explain his own agenda for the second term should he win. And Biden himself called off the second mock debate after 25 minutes, saying, I'm just too tired to continue and I'm afraid of losing my voice here and I feel bad. I just need some sleep. I'll be fine tomorrow. And then there's this stunning anecdote. Let's get to that. At one point, Biden had an idea. If he looked perplexed when Trump talked, voters would understand that Trump was an idiot. Klain replied, sir, when you look perplexed, people just think you're perplexed. And this is our problem in the race. According to Whipple, Klain feared that the actual debate would be a disaster, and his fears came true. It absolutely was a disaster. But here's the twist. Even after the debate, Klain wanted Biden to stay in the race. Whipple said that Klain emphasized to him that he believed Biden should have run for re-election and thought he could win and govern effectively for another 4 years, a sentiment consistent with his fierce defense of Biden in the weeks after the June debate. Klain is very nice for being willing to have conversations and just talk to people and communicate with people when other administration officials were unwilling to. So I give him credit for that. That said, how do you go through these situations? How do you see his performance during the actual debate and still defend his decision to run for re-election? Remember, there was a full month after that debate in which Biden hadn't dropped out. That month was robbed from Democratic voters, from the American people, because there could have been a short primary to pick a better Democratic nominee, no?
Yeah.
I'm too angry about this at this point, and I'm sick of rehashing it. They effed up, and they have yet to take any responsibility for effing up.
Yeah, so here's one more thing that it tells me. That Jill Biden is a really bad person.
Yes, okay, sure. But Cenk, it's not just Jill Biden, obviously.
No, here's why I say Jill Biden, right? Because look, in a best case scenario, these bubbles are they warp a person's mind so much that a perfectly intelligent guy like Ron Klain sees a guy falling apart at the seams, can't talk, doesn't know anything, can't possibly enter a debate and thinks we can win with him and he could be president for 4 years. Your best case scenario is mind unbelievably warped by that bubble, right? Bad case scenario for other people, etc., that might be involved is, I don't really care, I wanna stay in power. If Biden's in power, I'm in power. And I don't care that he can't think or he can't talk, right? Okay. We'll just wheel him out, right? But those are all for the advisors. Jill Biden is not just an advisor, she's his wife.
Oh my God, I mean, I can't imagine seeing my husband in that condition and still egging him on, urging him to run.
That's
I can't
unbelievable.
imagine it. I can't imagine it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, guys, look, the whole thing's over. The Bidens are never coming back. So this isn't some sort of like vendetta or personal. Who cares, right? If I never see Jill Biden or I never talk about Jill Biden again, it'll be too soon, right? But I'm just stunned by how power hungry she was. That she saw a guy like that every single day. She lived with him every single day, can't remember anything, doesn't know what's going on. And she thought, I'm gonna wheel this guy out and have him humiliated in front of the whole country because I wanna hang on to power. That's sick.
You know, the one other thing I'm gonna bring up is, okay, so here you have Ron Klain saying, no, I think he could win. I think he could, be president for another 4 years. In other books that have come out recently, apparently administration officials were preparing for a situation in which Biden dies during his second term.
Yeah. Of course they knew, of course.
They don't care about you. They don't care about the country. They don't care about Americans. This is the president of the United States. And they're not only playing with his life, they're playing with your life, okay? It's sick. The whole thing is sick.
What if he had to make a nuclear decision and he has dementia? And what if he says launch? Are you gonna overrule the president? How are you gonna overrule the president in the middle of this mess? So look, one last thing about this. Guys, when we said, and you saw it here on the Young Turks, like what, a year and a half before Biden dropped out, we did a petition saying we got to get him out of the race. Please, President Biden, get out of the race. Because it was so overwhelmingly obvious that he was in mental decline based on things he was doing in public. Even in the tiny snippets, it was super obvious, right? The entire mainstream media, all of national media was like, nope, I don't see it. And that's why Jake Tapper writing that book is maddening.
It is.
It's like OJ trying to find the real killer. Like, are you serious that you're gonna write a book about how the White House lied to the reporters? He was shaking hands with invisible people. And you guys said, no, there's no problems here. Young and dynamic behind the scenes. And you all reported that he was young and dynamic. You're 1984. You're what George Orwell warned us about. The entire national media, why? Because challenging power is heresy inside Washington. All these reporters, they're not reporters at all. They're just marketing executives for the people in power. Their job is to cover up all their faults and to pretend that they're mighty. It's the Wizard of Oz. And that's why the Democrats are at 26%, because we open the curtain, we're like, oh, that's the wizard? That's the wizard, a guy who clearly has dementia. And you're telling us he's like this amazing guy, the best Democrat to run against Trump and like an amazing president, FDR 2.0. Almost everyone in Washington are enormous liars. Please, the next time they tell you, don't worry, this Democratic leader looks like an idiot, acts like an idiot, but he's so smart. He's playing four-dimensional chess. You better obey him. Democratic leaders know best. No, they don't. They're a bunch of frauds.
Yeah.
Who are totally rooking you and serving their corporate donors. Joe Biden has said one true thing in his career. When he promises donors, nothing will fundamentally change. That's the one thing he meant. Okay, let's talk about Obama. Different story.
Yeah. So let me reset for that. All right. Yet another book has come out in regard to the 2024 presidential race and former President Barack Obama's role within it, especially on the Democratic side. Now, according to Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House, Obama really did not want Kamala Harris to be the Democratic nominee after former President Joe Biden dropped out. Take a look.
He didn't think that she could win. And we spoke to people very close to him who say this, and there were major concerns. So I think they were doing a quiet sort of lobbying effort to see, what the mood was and whether there was enough support for it. Certainly, I think Barack Obama was hearing from some donors. I know Nancy Pelosi was too, that Kamala Harris couldn't win. They kept doing this up until the final minutes weeks of, right after Joe Biden endorsed Kamala Harris. I think they were still calling around. It's why I think Barack Obama kept his powder dry for several days. He wanted to see how all of this would play out, but he had major, major concerns.
What were the concerns? What were the nature of the concerns?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that she just wouldn't be able to win. I think that they all saw her as a weaker vice president. I don't think that they felt like Joe Biden had really championed her enough, that she was coming in kind of ill prepared to run as president. Certainly, they look back at her last campaign, I'm sure.
I mean, look, Obama was right. I mean, Obama wasn't wrong. He was right. And look, the whole thing was a mess because you have the disastrous Joe Biden debate. He waits a month before he finally drops out and like robs Democratic voters from an opportunity of taking part in some sort of primary to pick a better candidate. And I'm sorry, like it's now over. So let me just be very clear. She was a very bad candidate. She wasn't funny, she wasn't interesting. I didn't buy into brat summer, whatever the F people were trying to sell us. Li Fong, a wonderful journalist, just recently published an investigative report he did for Real Clear Investigations. And in it, he found that the entire, all the hype around Kamala was bought and paid for by Democratic billionaires. Okay, all of these public figures and influencers, they didn't give a damn about Kamala Harris. Who knows if they actually voted for her or even support her, but they were paid to go out there and pretend like she was awesome, like she's the best candidate. They tried to manufacture, support for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And honestly, anyone paying attention and anyone who knows how politics works in America could see through it. I was able to see through it. But here's the other thing. You weren't even able to tell the truth. You weren't even able to do accurate analysis of Kamala Harris and how she was running this campaign. Because if you did, you're helping Trump win. You need to shut the F up.
Yeah.
And just pretend like she's a great, fabulous candidate who's definitely gonna win, even though the aggregate of polls consistently showed her trailing Donald Trump.
Yeah, so there's another group to watch out for here, and that's those so-called influencers in MSNBC. They're actually in the same bucket.
Yes.
Because look, guys, we'll get back to Obama and Biden because Obama didn't want Biden to run either, and I thought that was obvious for reasons I'll explain. But for Harris, it was exceedingly obvious because Biden drops out. And at that point in the beginning, all of them, Biden, Obama, and Pelosi, and Schumer, none of them endorsed Kamala Harris. Normally the establishment anoints, as they did with Biden in 2020. You remember Obama called everyone, got everybody, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, et cetera, to drop out of the race in South Carolina so that Biden could get all the votes so that Bernie didn't win, right? And so they all did exactly what Obama told them to do, and he coordinated that. And that worked to make sure that Bernie lost so that we couldn't have a populist option so Donald Trump could win. Anyways, okay, that's a different gripe. So now when Biden drops out, no one endorses Harris. That's obvious that they are not anointing. Super obvious, because we've seen them anoint in 2020. We've seen them anoint Hillary Clinton in 2016, and they're a machine. They all get on board. They all say that unity, unity, unity. Anyone who doesn't listen is a heretic and should be driven from the party, et cetera. In this case, the fact that, so Biden then screws them over. Half an hour later, he puts out a statement going, oh yeah, I think it should be Kamala. Biden didn't want Kamala at all. Biden thought Kamala was a disastrous candidate. He did that to screw over the Democrats like Obama and Pelosi who would push them out because he's such an egomaniac.
Yeah.
He's a nasty, mean, terrible narcissist, right? But the plan was none of us are gonna endorse her because we should have an open convention because she's a disaster.
Right.
Obama and Pelosi stick with that plan for an excruciating 5 days because everybody's going, why isn't Obama endorsing her?
Yeah.
Why isn't Pelosi endorsing her? Meanwhile, everyone is endorsing. Within 2 days, because of Biden, she rounded up all the delegates. And even after she got all the delegates, Obama and Pelosi hesitated before endorsing her,
That's
right?
crazy, yeah.
But when you point that out, what happens is, and this happened to us, and me in particular, all of the influencers online that are literally paid to kiss Democratic leadership ass, right? But to be fair to them, they genuinely believe it. I mean, they think that the path to victory is kiss ass harder, right? and that they'll yell at anyone not kissing ass. And they're like, how dare you, you're helping Trump. Their number one their thing is, you know how Democrats are like, there's nothing we could do, their song is, you're helping Trump, you're helping Trump, you're helping Trump, no matter what you say.
Yeah, you're
like,
a secret right-winger, you're helping Trump, you're voting for Trump. No, right. I can see the Democrats for what they are. What they're doing.
And it doesn't matter from day one, the minute Biden gets into office, if you criticize Biden at all or any Democratic leader, you're helping Trump, you're helping Trump, you're helping Trump. So that's their propaganda. They don't even know it, they're so in their own bubble. And MSNBC, same thing. So when we were saying, well, look, Obama's not endorsing. Look, your beloved Obama, not my beloved, your beloved Obama, your beloved Pelosi doesn't want it to be Kamala Harris. They're like, you're lying, that's crazy, there's no way, Obama loves Kamala Harris, you're trying to help Trump. How did that help? What did you do, you knuckleheads? You actually foiled your beloved Obama's plan, which was to do an open primary. And your beloved Pelosi, you ruined her plan. Why? Why did Obama, Biden, Pelosi, and Schumer not want Kamala Harris? Because they've been dealing with her all this time. They know she wasn't gonna win. They know she's not up to the job. But you wouldn't, but now turn around and criticize those leaders. So your profile in Courage, Barack Obama, was to whisper behind the scenes.
Yeah, totally.
Whisper.
Get a load of this, okay? According to the authors of that book, Fight, Amy Parnas and Jonathan Allen, Obama never thought Harris could beat Trump, but backed her when he saw he was under threat himself, suddenly in a position where his actions against Biden and Harris could diminish him in the eyes of Democratic elites.
Oh no, please. No diminishing for the grand legacy of benighted Barack Obama. I mean, terrible. My God, what if his feelings were slightly hurt up in Martha's Vineyard? Okay, so look, here's what a real leader would have done. Okay, would have made his issues with Biden public a year earlier, right? So they would have had plenty of time. Instead, what did he do? He sent David Axelrod to go speak out against Obama.
Oh my God.
Against Biden over and over.
So true.
And so,
yes.
Anna, what I kept saying, I'm like, Carville and Axelrod are the two guys trying to push Biden out on the airwaves. Who does Carville represent? Bill and Hillary Clinton. He's their top strategist, their top go-to guy. Who does David Axelrod represent? He's Barack Obama's top go-to guy and strategist.
Yes.
The Clintons and the Obamas are telling you to push Biden out. And every time I said, they're like, oh, that's not crazy. Speculation, there's no way. Axelrod, I bet he never talks to Obama. I bet Carville never talks to the Clintons. Come on, guys. Come on. All that denying of reality. And what did it get you? It got you a loss to Trump. But I swear to this day, I guarantee you, if one of those influencers or one of those hosts on MSNBC is watching this, they'd be like, no, if these meddling kids just hadn't criticized Biden or criticized Kamala, we would have won. It was your fault. You should have had no accountability. You should have just lied like the rest of us. No, Kamala doesn't do word salads. Biden is young and dynamic. You guys thought you could trick the whole country into believing this nonsense that you believed. Well, it didn't work. So are you ever gonna learn any lessons? Obama, you're worried about what will the Democratic elites think of me? So Anna interrupted when I said, what would a real leader do? Well, he would have come out and said, okay, a year earlier against Biden, and he would have said, as soon as Biden dropped out, I think there should be an open convention. Okay, if Obama had said that, you know what we would have had? An open convention.
I agree, and look, let's not forget the race dynamics that play a role in all of this, right? Because when there were some conversations happening prior to Biden dropping out, there was a lot of fear that if Kamala Harris wasn't his automatic replacement, well, Black women wouldn't vote for whoever the Democratic nominee is. They'd feel slighted by the Democratic Party. But having someone like Obama come out immediately and call for an open convention, that would be different. I think that would maybe mitigate.
No, that would have changed the whole dynamic because they've spent their whole lives worshiping Obama and Pelosi.
That's exactly right, yes.
If Obama and Pelosi, a woman and an African American, the two leaders of the Democratic Party, came out and said, guys, we think we should have an open convention. We love Kamala Harris. We think she might be able to win the open convention. We have a lot of faith in her, but we need to pick the best possible candidate, and we need to hear from the Democratic voters.
Yeah.
The voice of the voters is the most important thing. Let's go to a convention and sort this thing out, and we're rooting for Kamala, right? What would have happened is we would have had an open convention because the DAC community, the Democratic ass-kissing community, okay, they will do anything a Democratic leader tells them. And Obama and Pelosi have more credibility than Biden, who had just dropped out. If they had told them open convention, all of DAC would have turned around on a dime and would have said open convention, right? And hey, if you're in DAC, remember, what would an open convention have done? Why did I and Obama and Pelosi agree? Because we wanted to pick the best candidate so that we could beat Trump.
You could run and tell Dak.
Okay, and so it wasn't because Obama wanted to hurt the Democrats. It wasn't because Pelosi wanted to hurt the Democrats and wanted Trump to win. It's because they wanted to pick the best candidate. But the difference between me and, if we're being honest, Obama and Pelosi here, is that they didn't have the courage to say it publicly.
Yeah, it's true. All right, well, that was a nice venting session. Let's, I guess, end on Loomer?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Loomer.
I just think that there needs to be more appreciation demonstrated to Trump loyalists because unfortunately, we do see a lot of gatekeeping in the GOP. And the thing that I harped on the most during the campaign season was, the importance of vetting. I thought that we were keeping a binder full of receipts. I don't know if some of the people on the campaign meant it when they said they were keeping the receipts, but I meant it.
Yeah.
I literally have a binder of receipts, and I know who's loyal and I know who is disloyal.
That's Laura Loomer, and apparently she got several people within the Trump administration fired recently. They're specifically individuals who were members of the National Security Council. And so Loomer shows up to the White House, has a nice little conversation, and boom, these people are gone. And so what was behind all of this? Well, apparently Signalgate was the reasoning behind, wait, was it Signalgate? Maybe it wasn't, no. She claimed that these individuals are neocons, they need to go. Neocons don't represent the best interests of the Trump administration and the MAGA movement. But Signalgate does play a role in this because Mike Waltz is still employed by the Trump administration.
So we're gonna get to all that.
Yeah.
And I'm conflicted in this story for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
And I'm also befuddled because Laura Loomer is anti-Muslim and she's said it proudly in the past. She claims now that she's not, but okay. She said a lot of anti-Muslim things that are hard to take back. If she means they're great, but I'd be shocked, right? And she's pro-Israel, and pro-Israel usually is neocon, right?
Yep.
So the neocons are the ones that wanted us to invade 7 countries on behalf of Israel. So she's trying to get the neocons fired? Either there's something wrong with this story and they're reporting it kind of wrong, right? Or if it's true, is Laura Loomer principled? And she's actually against neocons?
I don't know.
I don't know, that would be shocking.
I'm gonna reserve judgment on that because look, fact of the matter is the Trump administration at this moment is full to the brim with neocons. And I'm not just talking about like low-level officials at the National Security Council. I'm talking about cabinet officials. Marco Rubio is a neocon. Okay.
So is Waltz.
Waltz is yes, Mike Waltz is a neocon. Another one is Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth is a neocon. So it's
so some argue that Hegseth's on the bubble. Okay, he likes war, but is he? No,
he's
in the book
he's a
he
neocon.
thought that Americans should get arrested if Israel doesn't like him or something. He's a neocon. But anyway, some people make the argument that he's not or that he's on the bubble. But there's others too. There's Mike Huckabee, the ambassador to Israel, unsurprising. And then there was Elise Stefanik, who was going to be our UN ambassador, but she got pulled because they were afraid of losing her seat in Congress. And she caught a lot of feelings over that. But at least she got pulled. But Mike Waltz is in the room when Laura Loomer is asking for the heads of all these neocons, and he's a neocon. So this is a super interesting story. And a lot of people will say Loomer shouldn't even be in the room. There, I'm gonna have a little bit of a unique opinion.
Okay, so as I mentioned, and I was correct. So this is in the wake of the Signalgate scandal, and so Laura Loomer goes to the White House and speaks to Trump specifically to get National Security Council officials fired. And he followed through, he listened. So among those who were let go include Brian Walsh, the Senior Director for Intelligence, Thomas Boudry, the Senior Director for Legislative Affairs, Maggie Doherty, the Senior Director for International Organizations, and David Feith, the Senior Director overseeing technology and national security. So look, to be fair, they're not low-level officials. These are directors within the National Security Council. Now, apart from the firing, several other officials who had been working on or at the National Security Council were reassigned back to their home agencies over the weekend. And this was even before this White House meeting took place. Now, notably though, as we've mentioned, Mike Waltz, who is the individual who added Atlantic journalist Jeffrey Goldberg to that Signal group message, he still has his job. He doesn't appear to be on the chopping block at all, which is shocking, to say the least. And he actually attended the meeting with Loomer, Trump, JD Vance, and others. A government official said that Loomer went to the White House yesterday and presented them with her research and evidence. The US official said Loomer was furious that neocons had slipped through the vetting process for administration jobs. Girl, they didn't just slip through the cracks and remain or get employed by the administration. Again, his cabinet is full of neocons.
Yeah, and how did they get there? Because Miriam Adelson gave him, $137 million, and her late husband gave him $200 million in the last 2 campaigns. So she got to handpick a whole bunch of these folks. So like this whole neocon slip through, patient zero, Mike Waltz is in the room as you guys are having this discussion. So I don't this story doesn't make any sense to me. So maybe she has a different definition of neocon. Maybe by neocon, she just means anyone who has ever been disloyal to Donald Trump or criticized him.
That might be it.
Maybe that's the receipt she's talking about. Hey, this guy once said something bad about you. Let's fire him. We only want loyalists who will do what we command them to do. So, but if she actually got real neocons fired who are pro-war, etc., that'd be awesome. Because a lot of people say, Anna, what is this MAGA influencer goes in and gets senior policy guys at the White House and National Security Council fired? That's crazy, right? Kinda. I mean, as long as the right thing happened, I don't really care who did it and how they did it. So if Bernie was president and he listened to Kyle Kalinske tell him to fire a bunch of neocons and we didn't go to war because of that, I'd be like, that's awesome.
That's, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
But I guarantee you mainstream media would be freaked. How could they bring this guy in?
Yeah.
That's just a YouTuber and listen to him, right?
Listen, when I go to a buffet, all right, I'm not angling for the weird potato dish with the weird sauce, okay? I'm gonna pick and choose what I like, what's appealing to me. But I'm not gonna crap on the entirety of the buffet. If it's a good buffet, it's a good buffet.
Right.
Right? So that's how you should think of politics. If someone on the other side of the political aisle agrees with you on something as important as ousting neocons from the White House, I jump in it, okay? I want
100%, but remember guys, giant boulder of salt, not just a grain of salt.
Yeah.
We don't really know if these guys were neocons because this story is super weird.
This story is weird, but she did release a statement confirming that she had that meeting with Trump and said that she's not going to get into too many details. So a source familiar said that they are being labeled as an anti-neocon move, meaning the firing. So
yeah, that's interesting. But she goes in the Oval Office, Waltz is there, JD Vance is there. I mean, it was a senior meeting that they invited like an influencer into. She makes a case for firing senior people and they do. I know Washington hates that, but you could make an argument for that's super responsive to your base.
Yeah.
The idea that Biden would give a damn about any influencer online, especially an influencer saying fire people in your administration, especially one that's criticized you before. they wouldn't get within a 2-state perimeter of the Oval Office if a Democrat's in charge.
I mean, that's definitely true. All right, well, happy half hour is next, everyone. Brett has written in to give you a little tease. Crazy Instagram model scandal. People are using AI to create Down syndrome models, and they are cleaning up on OnlyFans. What is going on? You're only gonna find out if you tune in to Happy Half Hour, twitch.tv/TYT to watch immediately after we wrap this up.
I guess I gotta clean up at some point. All right, go watch Brett.
Bye-bye.